Today I'm excited to talk to you about something that my studio and I think about all the time, and that is, how can we see different? How can we do work that really matters? But before we get there, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Justin Ahrens. I'm the creative director at Rule 29, and our mantra, our vision, what we're all about is to make creative matter. What that means to us is that we don't only want to make creative things, we want to make sure that everything we do matters at some level, both to us as human beings, but ideally to those that we work with, work for, and help meet and exceed their dreams. So my studio is about 40 miles west of the city. Here are some pictures of that. It's a converted farmhouse, and we're proud of our studio. And I share this with you just so you can understand a little bit of the context of who we are as a team and where we work. But today, I want to highlight something that is extremely valuable to me, and that's my family. This is them right here, a bunch of goofballs. And the reason why I want to highlight that for you today is because that's why I'm here. I tell my kids all the time, if you have an opportunity to make some sort of difference, to influence someone or something or some organization in a way that is positive, then you should do it. I tell my kids all the time, everything you can imagine is real. And that's hard to imagine oftentimes when we think about just all the things going on in the world, especially right now. But let me break it down for you. This is, kind of how I see the world. And that is, right now, there are over 7.7 billion people in this world. I can't even wrap my mind around that. When I was trying to break this down, and these are the kind of things I just think about, is how can you have some sort of impact in this world? And really the only thing I can think of is to start with, what do I have as an individual? We're all just one person. Can we truly have impact in this world? Can we really make a difference? Well, I think we can. And so when I'm in person, I'll often ask the crowd, can design change the world? And I'll ask everyone to raise your hand. So I know this is virtual, but do you think design can change the world? Raise your hand. The next thing I usually ask is, do you believe that you can change the world? Oftentimes when I'm in person, about half the audience's hands are up when it talks about design, and then it goes down to about a quarter or a fifth of people in the room that actually believe that they can impact the world. They can change it in some way, shape, or form. And I'm here to tell you that you can. And my goal for this presentation is to share with you ways that I've experienced it, and that perhaps you can see it in a different way, so you can see how awesome of an opportunity we have as creatives to impact the world. So let me start with one of my favorite quotes. And it's a Henry David Thoreau quote, and it says, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." And I had this up, I think maybe on my office somewhere, and I was just looking at it one day, and I was just like, do I really understand what that means? And so I did probably what most of us would do, as I Googled look. And the definition of look is to view something for a reason with an intention. I get that. And then when I was looking up definitions of see, something kind of popped out to me that was really interesting. And that was to notice something you weren't looking for. And that just blew my mind. And the reason it did is because the design, the creative solutions, the art that I experience, or even the wonder all around us, often hits me at this very moment. And that is when I notice it and I wasn't looking for it, and something clever and beautiful or just new hits me. So I wanted to figure out, how can I explore that? How can I challenge the way I see? And so that's my question for you today. How do you see? So throughout this presentation, I want you to think about that as you go through some of my examples and stories. So to get us in the frame of mind to do that, I want you to think back to your earliest experience or moment that you can remember that something happened or someone influenced you in a way to help you see differently. I'm gonna start with me. So here I am. This is young Justin, probably fourth, fifth grade. And at the time, I was a total nerd. I struggled at school. My parents were divorced, and I was that kid in class that doodled all the time. In fact, here is a sample of one of the doodles I did. It was a griffin. Like I said, I was a total dork, total nerd. I read all kinds of books, like Greek mythology, classics, all that sort of thing. But before I go too far, let's look at this brand brilliance right here, huh? JA, not bad. But the person or the moment that had me see the world differently was this right here. This is my 6th grade class. Here I am in the back row. This is Gigi Gillespie. I was in love with her. I don't know what this dude is even looking at, but the person that helped me shift was this guy right here, Mr. H. And the reason he did is because at the time, I'd moved to Arizona from Illinois. My mom was getting remarried, and I was struggling. I was in an abusive situation with my stepdad, and I just wasn't in a good place. And doodling and art and just kind of dreaming about things and creating stuff is really what helped me manage my day-to-day. And school was irrelevant to me. And he had an assignment where instead of giving just a simple test on a book report, he'd have you read the book, and then you'd get up in front of class and you'd present it. And so when it got to be my turn, I was dreading it. He goes, "Hey, Justin, I want you to give your book report, but I don't want you to read a report. I want you to draw it." And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, "You want me to draw it?" And he goes, yeah, I want you to draw it and present it to class. And y'all, I just sprinted home. I couldn't wait to create this book report, right? I was reading a book about gnomes at the time. Again, I remember I was a nerd, I told you that. And I just couldn't wait to get back to school that day. And I remember when I walked into class, I gave this book report, and a couple of things happened. First, I became a designer that day. I didn't even know what that meant. But second, and most importantly, someone saw me for who I uniquely was and gave me an opportunity to live that out. And that was a huge turning point in my life that I'll come back to in a minute. And so that's what happened to me personally when I was a kid. But then when you fast forward to work, I started Rule 29 in 2000, it's our 20th year, quite a challenging anniversary year. And in about 2006, 2007, I was talking to one of my kids, and they were asking me about Africa, why there seemed to be so many challenges when it came to water and malaria and health, and I didn't really know the answer. And so right around this time, I had met through a couple of my friends an organization that wanted to rebrand themselves, and they were working in Eastern Africa. And so here on my slide here, you'll see some of the countries they worked in. You know, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, and they wanted me to come and see the work they were doing. And I thought this was fascinating because I was offering to do this work really as pro bono to help them out because they didn't have a big budget. And they said, whether we take your work for free or not, we want you to come see the work first, which was amazing. And he said something I'll never forget. He goes, I want you to see firsthand what's happening. And right around that time is when I'd first started kind of exploring that word. And I thought, wow, this is a sign I need to go. So I talked them into having one of my good friends, Brian McDonald, come with me. He's a photographer and videographer. And we flew across the world to see this whole new context that I'd never experienced. And while we were there, we were supposed to just see and document what took place. And what was beautiful when we were there, and here are some of the portraits, is we went and interviewed people that the organization we're working for helped. And basically this organization is called Life in Abundance, and they would help some of the hardest hit youth and at-risk teens in urban and rural areas get healthy and get into programs to help get them off the street, or at least to train them in ways that can help them stay healthy, get a job, that sort of thing. And so here are some of the portraits of the people that I was able to meet. And then here are some of the scenes, like this scene right here. This was a home in the Kibera slum in Nairobi, one of the largest slums in the world. And it was just overwhelming to me. What can I do, this dude from the suburbs of Chicago, to impact this reality? And on the very last day, I was sitting outside this little office here, and this young lady had come out, and she had these little eye covers on, and she had just, for the first time, right after this, been given her first pair of eyeglasses. And she did something I'll never forget. And she started just kind of looking at her hands and at her dress. And I asked my translator, I'm like, what is she doing? And he's like, oh, she just got her first pair of eyeglasses. This is probably the first time she's ever been able to see clearly. And I just was like overwhelmed that I was there representing an organization trying to learn and see what they did, and they were literally helping someone see the world around them. And I said, I want in, I want to try to figure out how to make more of that happen. And so the CEO was kind of laughing as he was sort of witnessing the story happen. And he goes, all right, come on, let's go to the airport. We need to fly home. And so we're on this plane, and he gave me this big document to read. And it had statistics like this in here that were just so overwhelming. 20,000 children under the age of 5 die from preventable and or treatable diseases. 80% of the world's HIV/AIDS cases were literally in the area that I was in. And then one of the more common ones is 1/3 of the world lives on income less than $2 per day. Now this is overwhelming. Here I was super excited. I couldn't understand why he gave me, this document. And he was just trying to help me realize that the challenge wasn't sort of this, quick makeover type situation. It had a complexity, it had layers. And I really needed to figure out that before I could really approach the challenge in front of us appropriately. And then a few weeks later, I kid you not, I was in the Gap with my youngest daughter. She was in junior high. And I bought her a t-shirt that had this quote on it, and it was, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And there that word is again. And it just hit me. Because since I'd been back, I'd been really confused and kind of depressed, not quite sure what to do. And I went back to that number, that one. That it didn't matter how many people were in this world. It didn't matter how many people were in the context that I had witnessed. It was, what can I do to help one person? I'm one person, what can I do to help one person? That made sense to me. And that's when we went to work, right? And so I sat down. This is the organization's brand. I'm not going to talk about work necessarily, but just to kind of show you some of the things that we did. This was their original logo I think the CEO had done. I can do a whole case study on the conversations we had about how much they love this logo, but I won't. So we took this mark, and through a variety of reasons and research and working with those on the ground in East Africa, we developed this new mark. But the point of me showing you this is that I started where I could, and that was, I am great at telling stories. I can help them brand and share their work in a way that can help raise awareness, support, advocacy, and allow them to raise more money and more support so they could help that little girl with glasses. Or those portraits you saw earlier can really help them. And so we did a variety of materials, help them rebrand from top to bottom. And that's probably very similar to the context of how most of us work, right? But something was different for me in this particular project. And that was, for example, this is a book of images that we put together for the organization as a thank you. And we ended up getting the book printed and published, and it ended up raising like $500,000. This was something just totally out of left field that we had not any expectation of. But it was because we were helping tell the story and showing a need and starting to share with people the type of work we're doing. And we started to get so many people interested and involved and wanting to support us. But then one day I was just sitting in my studio, and I was just super bummed out. And because I didn't know if it was enough. And I just wanted to figure out how to do things differently than just a brand project. And Brian had sent me this email, my videographer buddy of mine, and he said, hey, watch this and tell me what you see. So I want to play this video for you, and I want you to watch it and just kind of record for yourself, what do you see?
Build a home
So what I saw at that moment, and how I can sum it up the best, is that design matters. I was having an opportunity to help those beautiful kids that you just saw on your screen get support, get the things they needed to help them, even if it's just for that day or for that hour or whatever. And I wanted to do more of that. And how we represented their story was so important, because that's what we do as creatives, right? We are able to tell a story, and we should honor it and tell it truthfully and honor those who we're telling a story about. And that's all I wanted to do was do that, and I wanted more of it. And so taking that time to really see that moment was huge. If you notice in the video, some of the kids would be on camera and then laugh a few seconds later. And that's because I was jumping behind them, trying to get them to smile and that sort of thing, because they just didn't feel worthy to be in front of the camera. It really would break your heart. But that moment really stuck on our mind, and I'll come back to why here in a second. So, what you do matters, and who you tell about what you do matters too. So this is about 2008 or 9, I think, and we started just sharing with some of our design friends and our clients what was going on and how we were participating to try to do work that impacted those around us. And some crazy things happened, and that was people wanted us to do that for them. And so suddenly we had organizations that had all kinds of social programs that wanted us to help them think through it strategically, or brand it, or how does it become more authentically a part of who they are, and come up with all different types of opportunities for them. And the reason why you need to do this is because if you've not done work in the sector, or if you've not done work in a way that really impacts someone's life or world, then you're missing out on a beautiful part of what we do as storytellers and as creatives. Is we're able to take this thing that's just inside of us, that's just innate, we're born with it, and apply it to improve someone else's life. It's beautiful and so rewarding. And so we started telling more people about it, and Life in Abundance started to grow. They came to us with a project for one of the world's newest countries, and that was South Sudan. And they wanted us to do something very similar to that first trip I showed you, and that was go and see what's happening, share the reality of what's going on, and try to help us do our job to share that story, but also anything else you can do in person to really improve the lives that we're serving. So a couple of things happened. The first thing is we collaborated with Kent State University and their graduate program to try to help identify ways we can communicate to the indigenous people in some of the communities we're in that couldn't read. And we had to communicate with them how to share with doctors that didn't know their native tongue, how they were feeling, what symptoms were going on in their household, and then how to also properly medicate themselves as far as dosages, like how much of a certain type of pill should I take if I'm an old man or a young child. But then also to share the story in a way that would really highlight the tragedy, but also the beauty that was there. And so this is where South Sudan is in Africa. And then here are some of the portraits of people that we were able to meet. We stayed in a small community in South Sudan. And these pictures on your screen are all the kids that we were with. And one of the things that was kind of funny is that you could tell here in this picture, I stood out a little bit. Everywhere Brian and I went, we attracted this big crowd, which was kind of fun and sometimes overwhelming. But additionally, because we had this idea. From that first visit we took to Ethiopia, we would show the kids the videos of them or the pictures of themselves in the viewfinder. And we always felt that we were there taking and we were never giving back, at least not right there at that moment. So we decided, we didn't tell anyone at the time, we decided we're gonna bring a printer and a ton of ink cartridges and printing paper and print out photos. So our rule was anyone we took a picture of, we had to give them a photo back as a thank you. And the one mistake we made is we did it the night before and asked this little dude not to say anything. And you'll see in the video I'm gonna play in a second, like the next morning, all the kids outside this fence, that's what we woke up to. It didn't take long to get around the village that some visitors were here taking pictures and giving them away. But similar to the other video, I want you to watch this, and what do you see? Especially when they look at their own image. What do you see? I love the end of that video because I don't know what they're laughing at. I think they're probably making fun of me. But what I love in that video, and hopefully you saw some of these moments, is just how intimate and beautiful and just incredible it was when they saw their images. And it wasn't until I was there that I realized none of them had ever seen their picture before. If they saw their reflection, it was really only in a puddle of water and maybe a car window that came to the village, but some have never seen their reflection, let alone their picture. And so it was so beautiful. I remember one night I got up in the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep, and I was kind of just walking to get some water, and I saw this one little guy up in a tree just looking at his picture under the moonlight. And it was, if I didn't want to ruin the moment, I would have tried to take a picture of it, but it was just so perfect. We lose that reality to how such little things can make such a huge difference. So from there, we created this book, very similar to the book that we did in Ethiopia and Kenya. And this book highlighted the stories and people that we met in South Sudan. We also were there testing out this concept of symptoms that were basically culturally agnostic iconography that people could just point to show symptoms. And then we also created a way to show weight. Basically, we'd have icons of, if your child, weighs a coconut or two or a jerry can full, here's how much medicine they should get. And we went and interviewed different doctors around the clinics to see what feedback they gave us as they tested them for a few months. It was such an rewarding and amazing experience to be able to do this. And so here are some of the samples of posters that we had in the clinics around South Sudan. So this shifted our whole organization. We really wanted to do things more and more like this and differently, and even impacted our for-profit work, I should say, in a way that was really powerful. And that was, we really want to understand more and more the human element and the impact every organization we work with made, both on the environment, on their employees, and those they were trying to serve. And so that's some heavy stuff I shared with you, I understand, but I also want to encourage you, don't ever stop having fun. that's part of what we do too, right? Is although it's fun to help raise money and know that you helped a bunch of people a world away become healthier and get some of the service they need. But also it's really important to do things that get you excited personally too. So this is another example of a rebrand. This is Life Water. They started in 1977, and they are one of the fastest growing water organizations in the country. And the CEO of Life and Abundance had moved on to Life Water, and so we helped them rebrand. Here are some of the images of we took in country. And they worked to help people understand the need for fresh water, but also sanitation and hygiene practices that were healthy. Water is actually the easy part. It's helping those learn how not to contaminate it, and also the value of washing your hands, for example, or keeping your dishes clean. That can really change things. So when I was there, we did a lot of different things. This is a picture of me, sadly, getting on the back of a bike and having this poor guy's tire pop. I did repair it, by the way. But while we're there, we realized that bikes were such a huge advantage in developing areas, especially where we were in Uganda. If you had a bike, you could carry a jerry can miles at a time. And jerry cans, those yellow cans that are on my head right now, and they're super heavy. So they're 40 to 50 pounds full. And if you had a bike, you could carry 4 or 5. If it was just you, depending how old you are, you could carry 1, maybe 2. And so when we were there, we saw bikes as being a huge advantage. And so that made us think, how can we get outside of just our normal and do something that would really amp up our involvement? So when we were at this trip, I found out that Life Water at the time, it cost about $40 to give someone water for life. And so we decided to adopt a village of 1,000 people. So that meant we had to raise $40,000 to help this village get the services that they needed. So we decided that we were going to come up with a little branded event. And so we called it Wheels for Water. And Wheels for Water really was kind of a simple concept. We were going to use our ability to tell stories and do them through in-person grassroots presentations, but also through website and digital storytelling. And then we're going to get people to follow our ride, but also ideally sponsor each mile we rode for $40. So we needed to ride 1,000 miles. So that year I was given a presentation in Boston. And so we decided that we were going to ride our bikes from Boston to Chicago 10 days straight and not drink any water that we didn't filter ourselves. And so when we landed in Boston, every ounce of water that the co-riders and myself drank, we filtered. There's a whole other funny conversation when you think about seeing guys in tights trying to filter water out of creeks and rivers and gross ponds. But what we did is we came up with this idea to raise this $40,000, and we created, direct mail material. We went around. Anytime I had a meeting anywhere in the country, I would try to set up an opportunity to present about the world water crisis and get people to be a part of it, to sponsor a mile or 2 or more as an organization. We did social media, as you see here. We all, of course, created a website. And then as designers, as I went to conferences, we also created posters and got people to buy a poster, and all the money went directly towards the cause itself. And along with posters, we also had clients come alongside, and we would design for them a branded cycling jersey that they then would be able to have and sell, and all that money would go to the event as well. So that first year, we wanted to, make a splash, and in fact, there were some conferences that we became the official cause for the event. We didn't raise $40,000, we raised $100,000. In the next couple years, Life Water kept asking us to do different rides to support different organizations. And so we created the brand, and so it could be flexible. And some crazy things happened. First of all, we started presenting all over the country and asking this question: do you believe you can change the world? Because we were doing it with this little event in the western suburbs of Chicago and impacting tens of thousands of people in Eastern Africa. We would take any opportunity we could to share the story. So here is a sample of an installation we did at a university after we'd done the first 3 years and going to the 4th year. of Wheels for Water and the impact that we were making and the tens of thousands of people that we were helping educate and bring into this story. Here's some other samples of some installations. We did this at the University of Notre Dame, where they actually supported us in one of our rides, and in fact even hosted us a couple nights as we went through South Bend. We even got recognized by Fast Company as this was a world-changing idea for all the stuff we're doing. But most dramatically is we had to do the rides. So 2014, we rode, 1,200 miles. In 2015, we rode the coast of California. 2016, we did century rides, 100-mile rides, a couple places around the country. 2017, we rode across the entire country. Did the same in 2018. And then 2019, we rode the 4 highest peaks in Colorado. And so you may ask yourself, why do that? And this is the reason right here. This is my trip I took actually in February of this year, right before the world closed down. I was in Ethiopia, and this is one of the schools that we helped put in hand washing stations and latrines. And up until COVID hit, we had just raised $950,000. We've helped over 19,500 Africans get safe water, sanitation, hygiene training. That's simply because we wanted to figure out if we could make a difference. And you can. This is all part of the Give initiative. So we give 20% of our time away or at a discount for organizations trying to make the world a better place. It's part of our culture. We just became a B Corporation this year as another way to reflect our culture of trying to use our business as a power for good. So if you don't think you can make a difference yet as a designer, let me share with you the end of the story with Mr. H. So if you remember this picture, this is, 6th grade class. I'm telling some friends about it, and they say, hey, you should call Mr. H. You should just find out what he's up to. And it took me a year to do it. And to be honest with you, the reason I was waiting is because I was terrified that he was not around anymore. I wanted to keep that memory, sacred. And finally, I didn't tell anyone. I broke down and I called him. And his son picked up the phone, and through a combination of things, I got a hold of him. And do you remember those times in life where you'll smell something or you hear something and it'll take you back to some sort of emotion? And when I heard his voice, I just felt so safe and comforted. And I told Mr. H, Mr. H, how you doing? I just want to share with you that I was going through some heavy stuff at home. I was being abused as a kid. I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for that book report that you stopped and saw me on. And he got really quiet. And I said, Mr. H, thank you. And I was nervous, I didn't hear anything on the other side of the line. And I was like, Mr. H, are you there? And he goes, yeah. And he was crying. And he goes, no one's ever said thank you to me before. And so he asked me if I had still kept with art and that sort of thing. I said, oh yeah, I'm a designer and I do all these things. So I remember I put a box of stuff together. It was annual reports and some logos and stuff. And he probably got it and had no idea. But what's interesting is a few days later, I got this tube on the porch. And I'm a poster collector. I love collecting posters. And I was like, oh, sweet. My wife had got me some new posters. And they opened it up and I couldn't believe it. He had kept every single one of my drawings. It was full of, I think, 10 or 15 drawings, including this note where my last day of school, I had sent this little thank you. And what's amazing about this is several years later, I got to go thank him in person for stepping in and saving my life. And it was a beautiful moment. So if you don't think you can make a difference, if you don't think you can change the world as a person, as a designer, I disagree. You totally can. So I challenge you to see different. How can you use your skills to make this world a better place? Thank you.